The nativity scene in Hollowell Town Square had been a tradition for 127 years. Same wooden stable. Same hand-carved figures. Same position in front of the old courthouse, illuminated by gas lamps that had been converted to electric sometime in the 1950s. Every Christmas Eve at midnight, the entire town gathered to sing carols around it. Every year, the mayor lit a candle representing the eternal light of hope. Every year, children were allowed to place their Christmas wishes in the manger where baby Jesus lay. Every year, by morning, those wishes were gone. And every year, someone in Hollowell disappeared. Jake Morrison had lived in Hollowell, Vermont his entire 28 years, and he'd never connected these facts until Christmas Eve 2024, when he stayed behind after the midnight ceremony and watched what happened to the wishes. What he saw made him understand why his older sister hadn't come home for Christmas in 15 years. Why his childhood best friend had moved across the country without explanation. Why the town's population had been slowly, steadily declining since the nativity scene was first erected in 1897. At 12:47 a.m., after everyone had gone home, after the square was empty and silent, the figures in the nativity scene moved. Not animation. Not mechanical. They moved like living things waking from sleep. The shepherds stood. The wise men turned their heads. The animals shifted and stretched. And Mary, the carved wooden Mary with her painted smile and hands forever clasped in prayer, reached into the manger. She pulled out the wishes, one by one, reading each with eyes that had suddenly become real, wet, and far too human for a wooden carving. And then she began to speak, her voice carrying across the empty square in the still winter air. "Thank you for your offerings. The child is pleased. The child is fed. And in exchange, as always, we will take one of yours." Her head turned, scanning the buildings around the square. Looking. Searching. Her eyes locked on Jake's hiding spot behind the courthouse columns. She smiled, and her wooden teeth became real, became sharp, became hungry. "This year," she said, "we choose the witness." Welcome back to Dark Shift Stories, where small-town traditions hide the darkest secrets. Tonight's story comes from Hollowell, Vermont. Population 1,847 and shrinking, where a Christmas nativity scene has been stealing people for over a century, and the entire town knows but can never speak about it. Before we dive in, I need to know, does your hometown have a tradition that everyone participates in but nobody questions? Drop a comment and tell me what it is. Because after you hear what Jake Morrison discovered in Hollowell, you might start asking why. If this story makes your blood run cold, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror. Now let's talk about the nativity scene that demands sacrifice. Hollowell, Vermont was the kind of town that appeared on postcards and quaint New England villages calendars. Population 1,847. Main street lined with buildings from the 1800s. A covered bridge that tourists loved to photograph. And a town square that looked like something from a Hallmark movie, especially at Christmas. Jake Morrison had grown up here, left for college in Boston, and returned 3 years ago when his father died and someone needed to run the family hardware store. He'd accepted his fate, small-town life, familiar faces, the comfortable boredom of a place where nothing ever changed. Except things did change. Slowly. Imperceptibly. But consistently. Every year, a few more businesses closed. Every year, a few more houses stood empty. Every year, the graduating class at Hollowell High got smaller. The official explanation was economic migration, young people leaving for opportunities elsewhere, families relocating to cities. But Jake had started noticing a pattern. It began in October when he was digitizing old records for the hardware store and found sales receipts going back to 1897. He'd been entering data into a spreadsheet when he noticed something odd. Every year, without fail, there was a notation in late December. Account closed, customer relocated, or account closed. Customer deceased, or simply account closed. no forwarding address. Every single year since 1897. One customer. One household. Gone. Jake had dismissed it as coincidence until he cross-referenced the names with the town's historical society records. Then the pattern became impossible to ignore. 1897, the Whitmore family. Father, mother, 2 children. Vanished December 26, 1898, Margaret Chen, schoolteacher. Last seen December 25, 1899, the Kowalski brothers, mill workers. Disappeared December 26. The list went on. 127 years. 127 disappearances. All within 24 to 48 hours of Christmas. And all of them happened the year after the nativity scene was installed. Jake had brought this to the attention of Sheriff Dorothy Crane, a woman who'd been in law enforcement for 30 years and had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much. "You're new to town archives, I see," she'd said, not looking up from her coffee. "Sheriff, this is a clear pattern. Over 100 people have disappeared from Hollowell, all at Christmas, all since 1897. Don't you think? I think you should mind your business, Jake. Some things in this town are above the sheriff's pay grade." "What does that mean?" Dorothy had finally looked at him, and Jake saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before: fear. Deep, bone-tired, helpless fear. "It means that every town has traditions. And smart people don't question them." She'd leaned forward. "Your sister Rachel. You wonder why she doesn't come home for Christmas? Why she makes excuses every year?" Jake's blood had gone cold. "How did you?" "Because she's smart. Smarter than you, apparently. She figured it out when she was 16. Saw something she shouldn't have seen. And she got out." Dorothy stood, ending the conversation. "You want my advice? Join her. Spend next Christmas anywhere but Hollowell. And don't, under any circumstances, attend the midnight ceremony." But Jake couldn't leave it alone. He'd spent the next month digging deeper. He found newspaper archives from the 1890s describing the installation of the nativity scene. It had been commissioned by Hollowell's founder, Jeremiah Hollowell III, who'd spent 6 months in Europe and returned with the wooden figures. "A gift to the town," he'd written in his journal. "To ensure Hollowell's prosperity for generations to come." The journal entries after that became strange. December 26, 1897, the arrangement is made. The child is pleased. Whitmore family has relocated to Boston, they say. I know better. But prosperity requires sacrifice. December 27, 1898, Margaret Chen. The child chose well, she had no family to ask questions. The town's mill reported record profits this year. December 30, 1899, the Kowalski brothers found their clothes folded neatly in the manger on Christmas morning. Nothing else remains. But the harvest this year was abundant beyond measure. Jake had tracked down Jeremiah Hollowell III's descendants. Most had left Hollowell decades ago. But he'd found one, a woman named Evelyn Hollowell Price, 93 years old, living in a nursing home in Burlington. When he'd mentioned the nativity scene, her face had drained of color. "You're from Hollowell," she'd whispered. "And you're asking about the child." "What child? Baby Jesus? That's not Jesus in the manger." Her hands shook. "My great-grandfather made a deal. He was desperate. The town was failing, the mill was bankrupt, people were starving. He went to Europe looking for investors and found something else. Something old. Something that promised prosperity in exchange for tribute. The disappearances. One person per year. Taken on Christmas. In exchange, the town thrives. Crops never fail. Businesses succeed. No natural disasters. No epidemics. Just slow, steady prosperity. Evelyn grabbed Jake's hand. But you can't stop it. People have tried. In 1923, the mayor attempted to destroy the nativity scene. He and his entire family were gone by morning. In 1956, a group of townspeople tried to burn it. All 7 of them vanished. The scene was untouched. So the whole town just accepts this. What choice do we have? We're bound to it. Every person born in Hollowell. Every person who stays for a full year. We're marked. And if we speak about it directly, if we try to warn outsiders, she choked, unable to continue. Jake understood. A binding. A curse. A deal that trapped not just individuals but the entire town. He'd left the nursing home with more questions than answers. And a growing certainty that he was running out of time. Because this year, for the first time, he was paying attention. This year, he would attend the midnight ceremony. This year, he would see what really happened to the wishes placed in the manger. And this year, according to Sheriff Crane's warning, he would become a target. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. The town square filled with residents bundled in winter coats, singing carols, their breath misting in the frigid air. Children ran around the nativity scene, excited to place their wishes in the manger. Parents smiled indulgently. And Jake noticed what he'd never noticed before, the fear. Hidden behind the smiles, buried beneath the holiday cheer, every adult in Hollowell was terrified. They sang with forced enthusiasm. They laughed with desperate brightness. They participated in the ceremony with the mechanical precision of people going through motions they didn't dare break. At 11:55 p.m., Mayor Thomas Brennan stepped forward to light the eternal candle. His hands shook as he struck the match. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying across the square, "we gather once again to celebrate the light that never fades, the hope that never dies, and the prosperity that Hollowell has enjoyed for 127 blessed years." The crowd applauded. But Jake heard the hollowness in it. As always, the children of Hollowell are invited to place their Christmas wishes in the manger. And tomorrow morning, those wishes will be gone. Taken to heaven, we say, where they'll surely be heard and answered. More applause. More hollow enthusiasm. The children rushed forward, placing folded papers in the manger around the carved wooden baby. Jake watched them carefully. The baby wasn't quite right. The proportions were off, head too large, body too long, hands with too many fingers. Details that blurred when you looked directly at them but became clear in peripheral vision. At exactly midnight, the church bells rang. The crowd sang, "Silent Night." And slowly, families began to leave, heading home, everyone moving just a bit too quickly, everyone avoiding looking back at the nativity scene. By 12:30 a.m., the square was empty. Jake remained, hidden behind the courthouse columns, camera in hand, recording. And at 12:47 a.m., the figures moved. The transformation was gradual and horrible. It started with the animals. The carved wooden sheep began to breathe, their wooden sides expanding and contracting. The donkey's eyes blinked, wet and real. The cow turned its head with a sound of creaking wood becoming stretching flesh. Then the people. The shepherd stood slowly, joints popping, wooden legs becoming something more organic, more wrong. The wise men turned, their painted faces gaining depth, gaining texture, gaining the wet sheen of real skin stretched too tight over wooden bones. Mary was last. She'd been kneeling, hands clasped in eternal prayer. Now she rose to her full height, taller than any woman should be, her painted robes shifting and flowing like real fabric, her wooden hands flexing and becoming something between wood and flesh. Her face was the worst. The painted smile remained, but beneath it, Jake could see muscles moving, could see expressions forming that had nothing to do with wooden carvings. Her eyes opened fully, and they were human eyes. Aware. Intelligent. Ancient. She reached into the manger and pulled out the wishes. There were dozens. Children scrawled letters asking for toys, puppies, snow days, video games. Mary read each one aloud in a voice that carried across the empty square. Samuel Brennan wishes for a new bicycle. Granted. His father will find one at the store, marked down inexplicably. Emma Torres wishes for her grandmother's cancer to be cured. Granted. The doctors will call it a miracle. Michael Chong wishes for his parents to stop fighting. Granted. They will find unexpected peace tomorrow morning. One by one, she read the wishes. And Jake realized with growing horror that she was actually granting them. This wasn't theater. This was real power, real magic, being channeled through the ritual. When she reached the last wish, Mary's expression changed. She read it silently, then looked up at the thing in the manger. The child, she said formally, requires feeding. The thing in the manger moved. It wasn't a baby. It had never been a baby. As it sat up, Jake saw what it really was, something ancient and hungry wearing the approximate shape of an infant. Its skin was bark and dried wood. Its eyes were knotholes that leaked sap. Its mouth opened, revealing not teeth but splinters, thorns, the jagged interior of a hollow tree. It made a sound. Not crying. Not human at all. A creaking, grinding noise like a tree being uprooted. Mary bowed her head. The tribute must be collected. As agreed. As always. The other figures formed a circle around the manger, chanting in a language Jake didn't recognize. The words made his ears hurt, made his vision swim, made reality feel thin and unstable. The child in the manger grew. Not physically larger, just more present, more real, more impossible to ignore. Jake felt its attention sweep across the square like a searchlight, and he pressed himself flatter against the column, praying he wouldn't be seen. The child's gaze paused. Focused. Found him. Mary turned, her neck rotating further than any neck should rotate, her wooden joints grinding. She looked directly at Jake's hiding spot. This year, she said, we choose the witness. Jake ran. He sprinted across the square, the camera still clutched in his hand, his breath coming in panicked gasps. Behind him, he heard the heavy footfalls of the shepherds, the creaking of the wise men, the grinding sound of wooden figures moving with impossible speed. He made it to Main Street, his car parked 2 blocks away. He could see it, freedom, escape, a way out of this nightmare town. But his feet stopped moving. Not by choice. Against his will. Some invisible force rooted him to the spot, freezing his muscles, turning his legs to lead. He tried to scream. His jaw locked shut. The figures emerged from the square, moving in formation. Mary at the front, the shepherds flanking her, the wise men bringing up the rear. And behind them, carried by Joseph, who had remained silent and still until now, was the manger with the child inside. They surrounded Jake, forming a circle. Mary stepped forward, placing her wooden flesh hand on his cheek. Her touch was cold and alive and wrong. You sought knowledge, she said. You questioned the tradition. You uncovered the truth. Her smile widened, becoming something that no human face should be able to achieve. And so you have earned a privilege. You will understand exactly what you're sacrificing for. The child in the manger made that creaking, grinding sound again. Jake realized it was laughing. Every town makes bargains, Mary continued. Your Jeremiah Hollowell was not unique. Across the world, desperate founders made deals with old things to ensure their settlements would thrive. Some made deals with spirits. Some with demons. Some with things that have no name in human languages. Jeremiah found us in the Black Forest. Or we found him, the distinction is meaningless. We offered prosperity. We offered protection. We offered everything a failing town could want. And in exchange, we asked only for tribute. One life per year. Such a small price for such great rewards. Why? Jake managed to force the word out through his locked jaw. Because the child must eat. And it prefers the flavor of human hope, human dreams, human wishes. Mary gestured to the manger. Every wish placed here feeds it. The innocent desires of children are sweetest. But to digest them properly, to transform them into prosperity for the town, the child requires seasoning. One adult life, salted with knowledge of the bargain, ripened with understanding of the sacrifice. That's what makes the magic work. You're monsters, Jake spat. We're wood, Mary said simply. Carved by a German artist who understood the old ways. We're vessels for something older. The child isn't ours, we serve it. And it has served Hollowell for 127 years. She leaned closer. Would you like to know what happens to those we take? The Whitmores, Margaret Chen, the Kowalskis, all 126 before you. Jake didn't want to know. But Mary told him anyway. They become part of the child. Absorbed. Their lives, their dreams, their potential, all of it consumed and transformed into prosperity for the town. The mill doesn't fail because it digests the Kowalski's strength. The harvest is abundant because it consumed the Whitmore's vitality. Every success Hollowell enjoys is built on the dissolved essence of its tribute. And when we take you, she continued, your energy will power next year's prosperity. Your hardware store will thrive, under new ownership, of course. The town will have a particularly good year. And 127 children's wishes will be granted because your life will fertilize them. Jake struggled against the paralysis, but it was absolute. The figures closed in, their wooden hands reaching for him. Wait. The voice came from behind the circle. Sheriff Dorothy Crane stepped into the square, her service weapon drawn but hanging uselessly at her side. She knew as well as Jake did that guns were useless here. Mary turned. Sheriff. This is not your concern. I invoke the substitution clause, Dorothy said clearly. As outlined in the original compact of 1897, a willing substitute may take the place of the chosen. Mary's expression flickered, surprise. Annoyance. It was hard to read on her half-wooden face. You know the price of substitution, Sheriff. I do. You will suffer twice. Once in the consumption, and once in the memory. You will be aware as the child feeds. You will feel every moment of your dissolution. It is not a kind death. I know. Dorothy looked at Jake. Your sister called me 3 hours ago. She heard you were asking questions. She begged me to get you out of town. But I knew it was too late. The child had already chosen. She holstered her weapon. Rachel was like a daughter to me. I won't let her brother die if I can prevent it. Dorothy, no, Jake tried to protest, but the paralysis still held. I'm 63 years old, Dorothy continued. I've seen 37 people taken by this thing. I've enforced the silence. I've helped cover up the disappearances. I've been complicit in this horror my entire adult life. She stepped forward. If I can save one person, just one, maybe that's something. Mary studied her for a long moment. Then nodded. The child accepts the substitution. Sheriff Dorothy Crane, you are this year's tribute. The figures released Jake. He collapsed to the cold pavement, feeling returning to his limbs in painful rushes. He tried to stand, to stop this, but Dorothy held up a hand. Go, she commanded. Get in your car. Drive to your sister's place in New Hampshire. Don't come back for Christmas. Don't come back at all if you can help it. I can't just. You can. You will. Dorothy smiled, and it was the saddest smile Jake had ever seen. Tell Rachel I'm sorry I couldn't save her parents too. But maybe you're enough. The figures surrounded Dorothy. She didn't struggle as they lifted her, carrying her toward the manger where the child waited with its mouth of splinters wide open. Jake forced himself to his feet, his legs shaking. He wanted to intervene, to fight, to do something. But the figures ignored him now. Their attention was entirely on Dorothy. He stumbled to his car, started the engine, and drove. He made it 3 blocks before he looked in his rearview mirror. In the town square, illuminated by the eternal light, he saw Dorothy being lowered into the manger. Saw the child's wooden arms embrace her. Saw her body begin to dissolve, breaking down into light and energy that the child absorbed with that horrible grinding laugh. Jake drove faster, tears streaming down his face, his camera, forgotten, still recording everything from the passenger seat. He drove through the night, not stopping until he reached the New Hampshire state line. Only then did he pull over and vomit in the snow. Jake arrived at Rachel's apartment in Portsmouth at 4:47 a.m. She opened the door in her robe, took one look at his face, and pulled him inside. "You saw it," she said. Not a question. "Dorothy," she substituted herself, "the child ate her." Jake couldn't form coherent sentences. Rachel guided him to her couch, wrapped him in a blanket, and made tea neither of them would drink. She sat across from him and waited for him to calm down enough to talk. When he finally could, he told her everything. The research. The pattern. Evelyn Hollowell Price. The midnight ceremony. The wooden figures coming alive. The child in the manger. Dorothy's sacrifice. Rachel listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "I was 16, she said quietly. I'd stayed out late with friends on Christmas Eve. Came back to the square around 1 a.m. to pick up my jacket I'd left behind. I saw them moving. Saw them take Mr. Harrison, the math teacher. He was screaming. Begging. They didn't care. I ran home, told Mom and Dad. They went pale. Sat me down and explained the family secret, we're descendants of Jeremiah Hollowell. The curse is strongest in our bloodline. We're marked more deeply than most." She pulled up her sleeve, showing Jake her inner wrist. There was a mark there. A symbol carved into the skin like a brand. It looked like a tree, but wrong, branches going down instead of up, roots reaching toward the sky. Every Hollowell descendant has this. It appears on your 18th birthday. It means you're bound to the town. If you stay for that Christmas, you can never truly leave. Part of you will always belong to the child. Jake pulled up his own sleeve. His 18th birthday had been in July, 6 months ago. His wrist was unmarked. Wait, I should have. You don't have it because you weren't in town for your 18th birthday. You were at college. Rachel grabbed his wrist, examining it. Jake, you're not bound. You got out before the mark could take. You're free in a way the rest of us will never be. But I've been living there for 3 years. Running the store. I attended the ceremony tonight. Attendance doesn't bind you. Only the mark does. You're not a descendant of Jeremiah, you're descended through Mom's side. The Hollowells are Dad's family. Rachel's grip tightened. You're not trapped, Jake. You can walk away. You should walk away. What about you? She pulled her sleeve back down, covering the mark. I tried. I left for college, moved to 6 different cities, changed jobs a dozen times. But the mark pulls me back. Every Christmas, I feel it tugging at me. Calling me home. I've resisted for 15 years, but it gets harder every year. There has to be a way to break it. There isn't. Hundreds of people have tried. The mark is the child's claim on us. It feeds on our connection to Hollowell, uses our bloodline as a tether. She stood, pacing. The best we can do is stay away during Christmas. As long as we're not in town during the tribute, we're safe. But the pull never stops. Eventually, it'll be too strong, and I'll go back. And when I do... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Jake pulled out his camera, setting it on the coffee table. I recorded everything. The figures moving. Mary talking. Dorothy's substitution. All of it. Rachel stared at the camera like it was a bomb. Jake, you can't show that to anyone. Why not? This is proof. Evidence. We can expose this, get authorities involved. Who's going to believe it? It's Christmas decorations coming to life. They'll say it's a hoax, special effects, a viral marketing stunt. Rachel grabbed the camera. And even if someone did believe it, what could they do? You think the FBI can arrest wooden carvings? You think the National Guard can shoot a fairy tale curse? So we just let it continue? Let the child keep eating people? What choice do we have? Rachel's voice broke. I've spent 15 years researching this. I've contacted folklorists, occult experts, paranormal investigators. Everyone says the same thing: old bargains can't be broken by outside force. They can only be ended by the original bargain maker reneging on the deal. Jeremiah Hollowell. But he's been dead for almost a century. Exactly. The bargain is eternal. Binding. Self-sustaining. Rachel sank back onto the couch. The only way to stop it would be to refuse to participate. If every person in Hollowell rejected the ceremony, if no one placed wishes in the manger, if the child was starved of tribute and worship, maybe it would weaken. Maybe it would leave. But that won't happen. The town depends on the prosperity. Without it, Hollowell would collapse. The mill would fail. Crops would fail. Businesses would close. Within a year, the town would be a ghost town. Rachel looked at him with hollow eyes. That's the trap. The child gives just enough prosperity to make the price seem worth paying. And everyone's too afraid to find out what happens if they stop. They sat in silence as dawn broke outside Rachel's window. Jake thought about Dorothy, dissolving into light and energy. About 126 others who'd met the same fate. About the children of Hollowell, innocent and unaware, placing their wishes in the manger every Christmas Eve. Feeding the monster their parents were too terrified to confront. I'm going back, Jake said. Jake. Not to stay. To document. To talk to people. To find everyone who's tried to break the curse and learn what they tried. He stood, energized by sudden purpose. You said old bargains can only be ended by the bargain maker. But Jeremiah Hollowell didn't make the bargain alone. He did it for the town. With the town's blessing. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can't break the curse. But maybe we can reject it. Convince enough people to refuse participation. Starve the child. Let Hollowell die if that's what it takes to kill that thing. Rachel shook her head. People have tried. They've always failed. The prosperity is too tempting. The fear is too strong. Then they didn't have evidence. Jake grabbed the camera. But I do. I have footage of the ceremony. Proof that the child exists. Proof that Dorothy died. I can show people what they're really worshipping. The binding will prevent them from seeing the truth. It prevented them from talking about it. But I'm not bound. I can talk. I can show. Jake headed for the door. I'm giving Hollowell a choice. Continue feeding the monster and keep their prosperity. Or reject the bargain, accept the consequences, and be free. And what do you think they'll choose? Jake didn't answer. Because he didn't know. And he was terrified of finding out. Over the next 6 months, Jake became a crusader. He moved to Burlington but returned to Hollowell weekly, camera in hand, interviewing everyone who would talk to him. He spoke to descendants of the disappeared. Most refused to engage. But a few, the ones who'd lost loved ones, opened up. He compiled testimony after testimony. Names. Dates. Circumstances of each disappearance. He spoke to business owners who thrived inexplicably. The mill manager who couldn't explain why their equipment never broke down. The farmer whose crops had never failed in 30 years. The doctor whose patients recovered from terminal illnesses at statistically impossible rates. They all knew. On some level, they all knew where the prosperity came from. And they all chose to benefit from it anyway. Jake created a website. Uploaded his footage. Published his research. Titled it, The Dark Secret of Hollowell, a town built on human sacrifice. It went viral. But not in the way he expected. Paranormal investigation shows picked it up, treating it like entertainment. Skeptics debunked it as an elaborate hoax. True believers praised his commitment to the craft of storytelling. Nobody believed it was real. Nobody except the people of Hollowell, who stopped talking to him entirely. By October, Jake was being threatened. Anonymous letters. Slashed tires. Bricks through his apartment windows. All with the same message, let it rest. Respect the tradition. Or become the next tribute. In November, he received a visitor. Mayor Thomas Brennan, looking 20 years older than he had at the last ceremony. Mr. Morrison, you need to stop. Someone has to expose what's happening. Expose it to who? Who's listening? Who cares? Brennan sat heavily in Jake's living room chair. You think you're the first person to try this? In 1967, a journalist from Boston came to investigate the disappearances. We showed him everything. He wrote a story. His editor killed it. Said it was too unbelievable. In 1989, a paranormal investigator came with equipment. She recorded the ceremony. Her footage was dismissed as special effects. Every decade, someone tries to expose us. And every time, the world shrugs and moves on. Then why are you here? If I'm doomed to fail anyway. Because you're making things worse. Brennan leaned forward. Your crusade is drawing attention. And attention means tourists. Believers. People who want to see the haunted nativity scene. They're coming to Hollowell for Christmas. Hundreds of them. Jake felt cold. What's wrong with that? The child feeds on wishes placed in the manger. It takes one life per year to digest those wishes. But if hundreds of outsiders place wishes. Brennan's voice dropped to a whisper. It might need more than one tribute. It might need dozens. And it won't distinguish between residents and visitors. You're saying I've put people in danger. I'm saying you've rung the dinner bell for a very hungry monster. And come Christmas Eve, it's going to feast. December 24th, 2025. Christmas Eve. Hollowell's population had swollen to nearly 4,000. News vans lined Main Street. Paranormal investigators set up equipment around the square. True believers gathered, hoping to witness the haunted nativity come to life. Skeptics came to debunk. Tourists came for the spectacle. And Jake stood in the middle of it all, realizing he'd made a terrible mistake. Sheriff Brennan's replacement. A young officer named Tom Reeves who'd only lived in Hollowell for 2 years and didn't know the truth, tried to manage the crowd. But there were too many people. Too much chaos. Jake pushed through to find Mayor Brennan. We have to cancel the ceremony. We can't. If we break tradition, if we don't perform the ritual, the child will take everyone. Brennan looked sick. The bargain requires the annual ceremony. If we skip it, the protection fails. The prosperity reverses. And the child takes what it's owed, with interest. How many? I don't know. The terms are specific, 1 life per year keeps the bargain active. But if we default? He swallowed hard. It could take the whole town. The clock tower began its countdown to midnight. Jake looked around the square. So many people. So many families. Children excited to place wishes in the manger. Parents who had no idea what they were feeding their children to. He had to stop this. But how? At 11:55 p.m., Mayor Brennan took his position to light the eternal candle. His hands shook so badly it took 3 tries. Ladies and gentlemen, visitors and residents alike, welcome to Hollowell's 128th annual Christmas Eve ceremony. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Someone started a live stream. Jake saw the nativity scene. The figures stood motionless, wooden, harmless looking. But he knew better. He'd seen what they became. What they would become again in less than 5 minutes. And this time, with hundreds of wishes in the manger, with thousands of people watching, what would the child do? At midnight, the bells rang. The crowd sang, "Silent Night." And children surged forward, placing wishes in the manger. So many wishes. The manger couldn't hold them all. They piled up, overflowing, a mountain of folded paper surrounding the carved wooden baby. The last child placed her wish at 12:13 a.m. The crowd began to disperse, heading back to hotels and cars, chattering about the quaint tradition. But Jake stayed. And he watched. At 12:47 a.m., with several dozen tourists still lingering in the square, taking photos, the figures moved. This time, it wasn't gradual. This time, they transformed instantly. Wood to flesh. Carving to creature. Harmless decoration to hungry predator. The tourists screamed. The shepherds grabbed the nearest people. A couple from Connecticut, a teenager from Massachusetts. The wise men caught 3 college students who'd come to debunk the myth. Joseph, silent and terrifying, seized a man who'd been live streaming the whole thing. And Mary stood, taller than before, more real than before, her smile wider than any smile should be. So many wishes, she said in ecstasy. So much belief. The child is pleased. The child is hungry. And the tribute this year will be abundant. The child in the manger rose. It had grown. Fed by hundreds of wishes, it was no longer infant-sized. It stood 4 feet tall, its wooden flesh body twisted and wrong, its mouth of splinters opening impossibly wide. It pointed to the struggling captives held by the figures. Then it spoke, its voice like trees creaking in a storm. Insufficient. More. All. Mary's expression flickered, confusion. Concern. All, my lord. All who placed wishes. All who believed. All are marked. All are mine. The figures spread out across the square, moving with inhuman speed. They grabbed anyone who touched the manger, anyone who placed a wish. Dozens of people. Families. Children. The screaming was terrible. Jake ran forward, shouting, "Stop. This isn't the bargain. 1 life per year. That was the deal." Mary turned to him. "The bargain has evolved. So many wishes require so much energy. Your crusade brought them here. You rang the dinner bell. And now the child will feast on what you've served. Then take me instead." Substitution, that's allowed under the original compact. 1 substitution per year. Sheriff Crane used that last year. Mary smiled. "You cannot save them, Jake Morrison. You can only watch them feed the prosperity you tried so hard to destroy." The child began to consume the captives. One by one, they dissolved into light and energy, their screams cutting off as they were absorbed. The crowd that had been so eager to witness the supernatural now fled in terror, trampling each other in their panic to escape. Jake watched in horror as a family, mother, father, 2 young kids, were lifted toward the child's mouth of splinters. He couldn't save them. He couldn't stop this. His crusade to expose Hollowell's secret had instead fed it more victims than it had taken in a century. But then he remembered something Evelyn Hollowell Price had said: people have tried to destroy it. They all vanished. The scene was untouched. Destroy the scene, and the destroyers died. But what if someone destroyed themselves instead? Jake ran. Not away from the nativity scene. Toward it. He grabbed the eternal candle, still burning, and thrust it into the wooden stable. The dry, ancient wood caught immediately. Mary shrieked. No. The vessel. The fire spread rapidly, consuming the stable, the hay, the manger itself. The child screamed, that grinding, tree-uprooting sound. As flames touched its wooden flesh, the figures released their captives, rushing toward the fire, trying to extinguish it. But Jake had grabbed the gasoline can from one of the equipment trucks and was pouring it over everything. If you want to take me for this, fine, he shouted. But I'm burning the whole thing down first. The child lunged at him, its splinter mouth opening wide. But the flames reached it first, engulfing its wooden body. It thrashed and screamed, and the sound was like a forest dying, like 1,000 trees being cut down simultaneously. Mary tried to grab Jake, but she was burning too, her wooden flesh body igniting like kindling. You fool! You've doomed us all. Without the child, without the prosperity, Hollowell will be free. Jake backed away from the inferno. It'll suffer. It might die. But it'll be free of you. The entire nativity scene was engulfed now. The figures collapsed one by one, burning, screaming, dissolving into ash. The child fought longest, its screams echoing across the square, but eventually, it too fell, burning down to charred wood and memory. Jake stood in front of the blaze, waiting for the curse to take him for destroying the scene. But nothing happened. The fire burned. The figures died. And Jake remained standing, untouched. Because he'd never placed a wish in the manger. He'd never participated in the ceremony. He wasn't bound by the curse. He was truly free. And now, so was Hollowell. The aftermath was chaos. 7 tourists were hospitalized with injuries from the panic. The national news covered the tragic fire at Hollowell's historic nativity scene. Investigators found no accelerant, Jake had removed all evidence, and the official report blamed faulty electrical work in the vintage decorations. Nobody mentioned the screaming wooden figures. Nobody mentioned the child. Those who'd seen swore they'd hallucinated from carbon monoxide. Those who'd been grabbed convinced themselves it had been panicked crowds, not supernatural entities. The human mind protects itself by refusing impossible truths. Jake was questioned but not charged. He'd been seen trying to extinguish the fire, several witnesses claimed. He was a hero who tried to save the historic display. Only the people of Hollowell knew the truth. And they couldn't speak it. But they could show him. In the weeks after Christmas, Jake received letters. Dozens of them. Some were thank yous from families who'd lost members over the decades. Some were curses from business owners who watched their inexplicable prosperity evaporate overnight. And some were warnings. The bargain is broken, but the mark remains. Those of us who are bound will suffer for what you've done. Thomas Brennan. My husband's cancer returned within a week. The remission that lasted 15 years vanished overnight. But I'd rather lose him to disease than to that thing. Thank you. Martha Brennan. The mill is already failing. We'll all be bankrupt by spring. But my daughter is safe. That's worth any price. John Torres. The town was divided. Half grateful for freedom, half furious about the cost. Jake returned to Hollowell in February. The town was already declining. Main Street had 5 empty storefronts. The mill had laid off half its workers. The winter had been harsh, with pipes freezing and roofs collapsing, misfortunes that Hollowell had been protected from for 128 years. But the people looked different. Lighter. As if a weight had been lifted even as their circumstances worsened. Mayor Brennan met with Jake in his office. He looked exhausted but no longer terrified. The town council voted. We're not rebuilding the nativity scene. We're not attempting to renew the bargain. We're letting Hollowell die if that's what it takes to stay free of that thing. I'm sorry it came to this. Don't be. You did what needed doing. What should have been done in 1897. Brennan pulled out a bottle of whiskey, poured 2 glasses. To Sheriff Dorothy Crane, and the 126 others whose sacrifice kept Hollowell alive. May they rest now that the child is finally dead. They drank in silence. What will you do? Jake asked. Stay. Watch the town fade. Make sure nobody tries to resurrect the curse. Brennan smiled sadly. Someone has to be here to remember. To tell the story. To make sure it never happens again. Jake left Hollowell that evening. He drove to Portsmouth, to Rachel's apartment. She opened the door and immediately grabbed his wrist, examining it. Still no mark. Still free. You actually did it, she whispered. You killed it. Yeah. And Hollowell? Dying. But free. Rachel pulled up her sleeve. The mark on her wrist was fading, becoming lighter, less defined. I can feel it. The binding loosening. For the first time in 15 years, I don't feel pulled back. She looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. How many people did it take? How many died in the fire? The child took 7 before I stopped it. But I saved the rest. 43 people who would have died if I hadn't acted. 7 lives to break a 128-year curse. Dorothy would say that's acceptable math. Dorothy would say 1 life is too many. They sat on Rachel's couch, much like they had a year ago. But this time, there was no fear. No anticipation of Christmas horrors. Just exhaustion and relief and the complicated grief of freedom purchased with blood. What now? Rachel asked. Now we make sure it stays dead. Make sure no other towns have made similar bargains. Make sure the story spreads so nobody ever tries this again. Jake pulled out his camera. I have footage of the fire. The figures burning. The child dying. That's going in the documentary. Nobody will believe it's real. I know. But maybe someone will believe it enough to investigate their own hometown traditions. Maybe someone will ask why their town is so prosperous. Maybe someone will refuse to feed their local monster. He looked at his sister. We can't save everyone. But we can warn them. That's something. Rachel nodded. That's something. Christmas Eve, 2026. 1 year after the fire. Jake stood in Hollowell Town Square. The nativity scene was gone, replaced by a simple memorial plaque. In memory of those lost to tradition, 127 souls taken, 1897 to 2024. May we never forget the cost of comfort, or the price of prosperity built on suffering. The town was smaller now. Population down to 1,200. The mill had closed permanently. Half the businesses on Main Street were shuttered. But the people who remained were genuinely smiling. Genuinely free. There was no ceremony this year. No gathering. No singing. Christmas in Hollowell was quiet, private, unremarkable. Jake was about to leave when Mayor Brennan approached, holding an envelope. This came to the town hall 3 days ago. Addressed to you. Jake opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in a child's handwriting. Dear Jake. Thank you for freeing us. The child is dead and we are finally at rest. The 127 can sleep now. But I have to warn you about something. The child in Hollowell wasn't unique. There are others. Different towns, different bargains, different monsters. We can feel them, those of us who passed through. We can sense the network of deals across the world. You killed one. But there are dozens more. Maybe hundreds. And now that one has died, the others know humans can fight back. They're adapting. Getting smarter. Harder to expose. Watch for the signs, towns too prosperous. Traditions too old. Disappearances too regular. And if you find them, burn them like you burned ours. Save everyone you can. We're rooting for you from whatever comes after. Dorothy Crane and the 127. Jake lowered the letter, his hands shaking. He'd thought destroying Hollowell's curse would be the end. But it was just the beginning. His phone buzzed. A news alert, mysterious disappearance in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, local tradition under scrutiny after missing family. He clicked the link. The article showed a photo of Bethlehem's town square at Christmas. There was a nativity scene there too. Different from Hollowell's. But similar enough. And in the comments, he saw messages from people describing other towns. Other traditions. Other patterns of disappearances around the holidays. Jake called Rachel. I'm sending you a list of towns. I need you to research their Christmas traditions and cross-reference with missing persons data. Jake, you can't fight all of them. Maybe not. But I can fight some. I can warn people. I can burn what needs burning. He looked at the memorial plaque, thinking of Dorothy and the 126 others. They sacrificed themselves to keep Hollowell alive. I can sacrifice my comfort to keep others from meeting the same fate. This will consume your life. Better than letting it consume more innocent people. He hung up and started his car. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania was a 7-hour drive. He'd be there by morning. As he pulled out of Hollowell for what might be the last time, he didn't notice the small figure watching from the town square. A child. Maybe 8 years old. Wooden. Carved. Standing where the nativity scene used to be. It had escaped the fire. Hidden. Waiting. And as Jake's car disappeared down Main Street, the wooden child smiled. Then it began to walk. Slowly. Purposefully. Toward the memorial plaque. It stood in front of the plaque and placed one wooden hand against it. The metal began to warm. To glow. To transform. Words appeared beneath the original inscription. The child is dead. Long live the child. The bargain adapts. The hunger remains. And the next 127 years begin, now. All across Hollowell, the residents felt it. The pull returning. Weaker than before, but present. Growing. The curse wasn't dead. It had just gone dormant. Waiting. Adapting. Learning. And in towns across America, Bethlehem, Nazareth, Noel, Santa Claus, Christmas, Rudolph. Other nativity scenes stood silent in their squares. Waiting for their own midnight ceremonies. Waiting for their own tributes. Waiting for their own Jake Morrison to try to burn them. Because that was the real secret. The one Dorothy's letter hadn't mentioned. The child wasn't a single entity. It was a species. And Hollowell's child had been calling to its siblings for 128 years. Now they knew humans could fight back. And they were hungry for revenge. In Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, a family placed wishes in their town's manger. The wooden figures didn't move. Not yet. But their painted eyes followed the family as they left. And deep in the carved wood, something ancient smiled and began to wake.